Whole bunch winemaking has been known to add a whole bunch of extra herb and spices notes. And on top of that, it can also add some really vibrant, crunchy tannins to a wine. But as in vogue and trendy as this technique is, winemakers do need to proceed with caution, because if you take just a little peek beneath the surface of this rather cool sounding winemaking technique, you will see very quickly that it is the winemaking equivalent of swimming with sharks. For starters, because having lots of stems in your wine ferment can take a fatal bite
See what I did there?
out of the natural acid in your wine. And this is because stems have lots of potassium in it, and potassium ions then bond to the tartaric acid, which you really want in your wine, and essentially form cream of tartar, which then drops out and sinks to the bottom. And if there's cream of tartar at the bottom, it means that there's no tartaric acid left in your wine. Great news if you need meringues. It's terrible news if you're making wine. Secondly, we know that stems can add lovely spice and herbs, but when you're working with cultivars that already have naturally herbal elements or quite pronounced greener tinges to them, like Cabernet Sauvignon or Merlot or Carmenere, then adding in the herbs and spices from whole bunch winemaking really can take the balance completely out of whack and deliver these weird tasting wines that really taste more like lawn trimmings or salad than any sort of fruit concoction. And for most wine drinkers, that's a bad thing. Now, we're talking about a whole bunch winemaking because today's hand drink solo wine of the day is the Gabrielskloof Wholebunch Syrah, made by winemaker Peter-Allan Finlayson, using fruit from the Bot River Ward, which, if you don't know where that is, it has Elgin to its northwest, and it has Hemel and Ardagh to the southeast, with Bot River in the middle. And if you've been enjoying the video so far and want to stay up to speed with South African wine info and geeky winemaking notes, then subscribe to the Hand Drink Solo YouTube channel, where we have at least 300 more of these sorts of videos. And if you're feeling generous, then give us a thumbs up, as it will help more people like you to discover the content that we produce. Gabrielskloof as an estate was established in 2001 on the outskirts of the Bot River town. And I think it's fair to say for the first decade or so, the wines kind of trundled along and the brand just was. But things really took a step up from 2014 onwards, when Peter-Allan Finlayson joined the team as winemaker and cellar master. And from then onwards, the wine range took on a whole new level of dynamism. So aside from obviously the really interesting experimental wines like this 100% whole bunch Syrah, he also has a fascinating series of wines called the Landscape series, which features 2 Syrah/Shiraz wines, which are separated according to the soils that they are grown on. So there is a Syrah on shale and there's a Syrah on sandstone. And it's a lot of fun to drink those 2 wines alongside one another. Also, their Cabernet Franc is certainly not to be sneezed at. For those of you who may think that the name Peter-Allan Finlayson sounds familiar for some reason, well, firstly, it may be because Peter-Allan Finlayson is the son of Peter Finlayson, who is one of the co-founders of the now famous Bouchard Finlayson estate in Hemel and Ardagh. Secondly, Peter-Allan Finlayson also has his own range of wines called Crystalline, which includes a bunch of single vineyard Pinot Noirs and Chardonnays, which are really exciting. In fact, I would say probably some of the most exciting Pinot Noirs to come out of the Hemel and Ardagh at the moment. Now, when we get into the glass and give this guy a sniff, well, we immediately get a kind of what I call grape soda or cherry soda type note to it that I often associate with carbonic maceration winemaking. Now, even though this is not explicitly a carbonic maceration wine and there was no tanks filled with CO2, the fact that all the berries are thrown in as whole berries attached to their bunches still means that you are always going to get elements of that Carb-Mac fermentation that takes place inside the berry with no yeasts. And it's really just sugar and a few enzymes and some organic acids that mix together to create alcohol and other stuff. So you will get those sorts of Carb-Mac notes in a wine like this, even though it may not explicitly be carbonic maceration. But then beyond that kind of grape soda, cherry soda, candy element, there's also slightly deeper, more moody, savory notes of green olive brine and also a little bit of rocket leaf. And for me, rocket leaf is kind of that nexus between herb and spice, because it is a leafy thing, but it also has loads of peppery, rotundant type notes to it. Now, this is not overtly peppery, but there is that kind of mix between herb and spice. And then finally, it's not just herbs and candy. There is some fresh fruit, and it's lovely fresh fruit as well. Kind of a vivid blackberry note, and also even a touch of red cherry. Now, when we give it a sip, well, for starters, honest, it's definitely not that comforting leather couch in front of the fire on a cold night type Syrah. This is vibrant, bright, juicy, quite clearly defined. And so again, you've got berry notes, red cherry, red currant. They come out the gate first, followed by sweeter, deeper blackberry fruit. We also talked earlier about how whole bunch fermentation can add in a little bit of a kind of crunchy green tannin structure to it, and that's definitely in here. The tannins are youthful. They're not overpowering. They just are quite defined in their texture, and that is often to be found on these wines where there is a large percentage of whole bunch fermentation. And so we've said a lot about the candied Carb-Mac notes and the herbal elements and the fresh fruit, but I think probably the defining frame for this entire wine is a kind of green tinge to it all. Like I said, the olive note that's in there, it's not black olive. It's kind of like a green olive element, and the herbal rocketly thing is quite pronounced, and so it almost becomes the defining feature, this seam around the edge of greenness, but not in an unripe, unpleasant way, rather just in the fact that it really is a delightfully green complicating factor to the mix of red and black fruit. And this is almost definitely created by the abundance of stems that get thrown in to the ferment and allowed to sit along with the fruit for all that time. Now, if you want to go deeper into the science of this sort of winemaking, I left a link to 2 videos, one of which will discuss the chemistry of carbonic maceration winemaking, and the other will tell you all about how to preserve natural acid in winemaking when you are using whole bunch fermentation and are worried about all that potassium.